Many automotive advancements owe a debt to the Hudson Motor Car Company. It was their engineers who first came up with the idea of using brakes not only on the front wheels, but also on the rear. They were also the first in the world to add oil pressure and generator charging indicators to the instrument panel. In 1910, Hudson engineers invented the wet multiplate clutch, or as it became known, the cork insert clutch. This design ensured smooth engagement of the submerged driving and driven clutch discs. Then in 1916, Hudson engineers designed the Super 6 inline six-cylinder engine with a higher compression ratio than its competitors, thanks to being the first in the world to use a balanced crankshaft. From that point on, the inline six-cylinder engine became Hudson's signature feature. By 1929, all Hudson car bodies were made entirely of steel, while many competitors were still attaching sheet metal to a wooden frame. In the same year, Hudson, including its branches in England and Belgium, reached third place in the U.S. in terms of production volume, with 300,000 vehicles, trailing only General Motors and Ford. The Hudson brand survived the Great Depression and World War II. In 1954, it merged with Nash, and in 1957, it was absorbed into the American Motors Corporation. Now, its once great name doesn't immediately ring a bell for many. The Hudson Motor Car Company was founded on February 24, 1909. Two figures stood at its origin: Joseph L. Hudson, the wealthy owner of a chain of department stores called Hudson's, and his distant relative Howard Coffin, the owner of a small, ambitious, and driven but cash-strapped automotive firm. The newly formed brand was named after the retail magnate, not just because money talks, but more for marketing reasons. The word coffin on a radiator grill, after all, hardly promised success for the partners. As the saying goes, as the ship, so shall it sail, and Hudson sailed with great success. In those years, America was getting on wheels, and good sales awaited primarily those who made mass-produced and affordable cars. Hudson's very first model, the Model 20 Roadster, with a 20-horsepower four-cylinder engine, could reach a respectable, for the time, 80 kilometers per hour. It cost $900, significantly more than a Ford Model T, but its characteristics were closer to those of expensive cars. By the end of 1909, over 1,000 of these vehicles had been sold. In 1912, a six-cylinder engine and a new model, the Mile a Minute, appeared. Its name spoke for itself. The car could travel a mile in 1 minute, which is equal to a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. Soon, the company switched to producing cars exclusively with six-cylinder engines. In 1916, behind the wheel of a Hudson Super 6, driver Ralph Mulford reached an unprecedented speed for production cars of 164 kilometers per hour on Daytona Beach. After that, with his partner Vincent, he participated in a grueling endurance run. Starting from San Francisco on the west coast of the United States, they drove to New York in just 5 days, turned around, and reached San Francisco in another 5 days, setting a new record. By the early 1920s, Hudson Motor Car Company's products were clearly not for the poor. American President Herbert Hoover, millionaire William Vanderbilt, and the great tenor Enrico Caruso were among those who drove cars of this brand. The main feature of these cars that attracted such personalities was their conservatism. By the early 1920s, car bodies were starting to take on rounded shapes, but Hudson, as before, continued to make boxy designs, most likely due to the simplicity and low cost of their production, which affected the price. For a relatively small amount of money, the buyer acquired a reliable car with a dynamic, torquey 76 horsepower engine and good handling characteristics, whose dimensions were in no way inferior to the very expensive Cadillac. It was a common perception in the New World that the size of a car was directly related to its quality and prestige. A certain English engineer, Red Rain, even started buying Hudson chassis, fitting them with British-style bodies, and selling them under his own Russia brand. Hudson cars were rare in Russia before the revolution, although some trading houses sold Hudson engines, advertising them as the best type for Russian roads. However, sales were not particularly successful. Only after the revolution did the Amtorg Trading Corporation, which handled trade relations between the Soviet Union and the North American United States, as America was then called, purchase cars of this brand. Not so long ago, the Hudson brand was remembered in Russia. At vintage car exhibitions, a blue boxy sedan, a 1923 Hudson Super 6 model, began to appear, one of the few American rarities. During the Prohibition era in America, from January 16, 1920, repealed 13 years later, a car like this would have been driven by, if not the King of Chicago, Al Capone, whose passion for the Cadillac brand is well known, then perhaps some underground supplier of forbidden drinks, like Bill McCoy, the real McCoy of alcohol smuggling in America. McCoy, a former captain who built yachts in Florida, sensing big money, retrained as a bootlegger, the English word for smuggler. McCoy started shipping first-class Irish and Canadian whiskey to America by sea. Those who bought scotch from him claim that Bill never diluted his product, always leaving with the remark, "It's the real McCoy." This phrase became a common saying among Americans, meaning a genuine, unadulterated thing. Further, the goods went to secret warehouses and then into Hudson cars. Few police officers would have suspected such a respectable vehicle. After all, a clever bootlegger could earn up to $5 million a year from alcohol, while a good worker's salary was $50 a week. Al Capone, by the way, preferred to travel in a Hudson limousine. Interestingly, the police officers who hunted down bootleggers often drove the exact same cars. The penny pinchers from the police department's administrative division preferred not to spend extra money on a Cadillac or Buick, as a Hudson Super 6 sedan cost $1,950 in 1923, while a Cadillac Series 61 cost $3,950. Hudson owners came from different strata of American society. Stock market speculators living on the edge who engaged in Wall Street speculation, semi-bankrupt aristocrats with long names and thin wallets who were obligated by their status to own a car from this firm, as well as successful middle managers who hadn't yet earned enough for the coveted American symbol of success on wheels, the Cadillac. However, even now, Hudsons from the 1920s play a supporting role in the world of classic cars. Models of this brand are not as popular as Cadillac, Buick, or Packard. The reason for this is the large number of units produced and their frankly simple appearance. Therefore, these Hudsons have moved into the category of pioneer oldtimers. That's what vintage cars are called, that are equal in value to a modern new car in the D-Class. It is accessible to both the novice collector and the not-so-wealthy enthusiast of old cars. But such cars are still being trained on by novice restorers. The hand of a future master won't tremble, and it's not a pity to work on. Nevertheless, there is a certain charm in the simple, boxy body, the rectangular door handles, the wheels with wooden spokes, the large headlights, and the wide running board.